Yeah, hi everyone. So today we'll build a small project to understand how instead of returning the OpenAI's completion model response, instead of waiting when we send a prompt to the OpenAI completion model, now instead of waiting for the whole response to be generated and then showing it to the on the client screen, which can take, maybe if the response is small, so it will take very less time, but if the response is big, so it might take 2 3 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it is. So that will be a bad user experience. So how can we stream the response as soon as it is generated? So I'll just quickly show what we are building. So we will be over here we will be sending a prompt. We'll write a prompt and we'll send it to the OpenAI completion model, and we will stream the response and we'll show it in this section here. So over here I have some prompts, like write a prompt of 10 words. So if I submit, so you can see it did not wait for the whole response to be generated. It was streaming the response as soon as we got it from the OpenAI. So before starting to build the project, we will go about a little theory. Just 3 slides. I'll quickly go through it because it's a small concept that we should understand, as we'll be using it in building the project. This server sent events. So this is what we will be using while building this project. So server sent events are events that a server can push to our app whenever it wants without the need to make an initial request. So though over here we are making a request and then we are getting back the server sent events, but server sent events does not need any initiation. Like, we can just set up listeners on our client and the server can keep sending us the events and we can process it on the front end. The updates can be streamed from server to the client as they happen, or we can put some timers if we want some intermittent changes. These are unidirectional channels from the server to the client, so we cannot through this channel we cannot send any message from client to the server. We'll get the events or messages from the server to the client. Data will only be sent from the server. No, that's what I just said. And it's, unlike WebSockets, where the communication is in both the directions. And we don't need any special protocol for this. We can SSEs, that is server sent events, are sent over traditional HTTP only. And yeah, so this is what we will be doing to receive SSE on the client. Either set up a listener or read the stream. So we can set up a listener, but in order to set up a listener, we have to write the code in use effect hook, and it will be continuously listening. But we don't want that. We just want it to read the data when it gets the response. So we don't want a continuous listener. That is why once we make a post call for the prompt, once we send the prompt and the response that we receive, we'll read it as a stream. We'll read the stream. And the format, how should the message be sent? Because the message that OpenAI sends as a stream is again a server sent event itself. So in order to parse it, we should understand what is the format, how the data is sent, and similarly the data we will be sending back to the client will again be SSE. So we have to understand what should be the message format. So again, it should be a plain text, nothing special. The content type should be event stream, text event stream. So we will be setting this header when we send the message or events from our server to our client. So this is what the header we will be setting. Now every event that we send, it is called it has messages. Now every message should have data at the beginning, data in the colon in a small space, one space, and 2 new line characters. So like over here you can see this is a message that we can send, which is the correct format for SSE message. So where we have data, colon, and then one single space, and then message, my message. It could be any message. It could be like a text, or it could be a stringified JSON, whatever it is. And then if the message ends, so we have to give 2 \n, or that is new line characters. Multi-line message, because in our case we will be getting multiple chunks of data from OpenAI, and that's what we'll be sending to the client. So in that case, we will be sending the data like this, where we have first line, second line, like multiple chunks we'll be sending. Yeah, so and the last thing in SSE is the event name. Whenever we send a message, every message has an event name. So in a single event source, like whenever we will start sending the message or the events, we can have multiple event names from the same server. So we can, in that way, we can identify in the client when we are trying to parse it. So if an event name is not specified, like when we are sending the message and the event name is not specified, so the event name default name is message. So over here you can see I have given example. Whenever we'll be sending a message, it will be something like data space, then maybe message and first message. This is an example I have taken up from web.dev. So over in the first line there is no event name, so the event name is message. In the second line, before sending the message, we are defining an event, so which is user logon. So once that second line of data is sent, it will be sent for the event name user logon. So once we will parse it on the front end, we have to listen on user logon. So this is how we do it. I know it's not very clear right now, but once we start writing the code, in fact I'll go through the code so that it's quick. You'll understand. You'll start understanding. I have actually added comments in each line, so it will be very easy to understand. So this is the NextJS project I have built, and we are using TailwindCSS for styling. So it's anyhow a small project, so nothing much about Tailwind in here. And we have APIs and just one page. I have just index.js where I have all the front-end code. I'll get to this later. First I want to cover the API. There is just one API, that is generate, so /API/generate, where we will be making a post call. And OpenAI service is just one file that I have created. I'll also go through package.json, so you can see I have no additional package other than OpenAI. So this is the only package that we need for this project. And OpenAI services I have set up where we are just configuring, where we are passing the OpenAI API key. So in order to run this, you should have this OpenAI API key, which you can get from the OpenAI website. And then we are just creating an OpenAI object, and I'm just default exporting from OpenAI services. So that's what I'm importing it here. So as we saw in the demo, that we were writing a prompt and we are clicking on submit. So that prompt is what we are sending to this route in a post call. So in this route, if there we will only be accepting a post method. Otherwise, we will just return error and method not allowed. Okay, so now over here, as we discussed in the slide, because we want to send an event stream for the response, once the response we start getting from OpenAI, it has to be event stream. So now we are setting the header. The content type is text stream, and cache control, no cache, is that we don't want the response to be cached. We want the response always to be picked up from the server, so like the request should always come here. So it's just, if you want you can put it, otherwise it's fine. But yeah, in production I think these things we should take care of. Okay, now over here we are extracting the prompt from the body, and then we are making an API call. We are using OpenAI package. This is what we exported from OpenAI services after configuring, and we are using create completion to hit the completions API. If you don't want to use this package, you can also directly make a post call to the completions model API. And over here you can see I'm giving a model. Now I'm using DaVinci model, but you can use Turbo 3.5 or any other that you like. Then I'm sending a prompt, but for I think Turbo 3.5 the prompt is slightly different. So that you have to take care of. Now max tokens I have kept to 50. Temperature I have kept something so that I get a different poem every time I request. And you can see I have not kept a wait here. I'm just returning it as a promise, so response will be a promise. Now stream, if we keep true, in this case we will get the response from OpenAI in a stream in small chunks. Otherwise it's default false, and if it is false, so we get the response as a whole. And this is a small setup that we have to do when we are using OpenAI. When we are using streaming, like it is the same for if we are using the completions API. Again, we have to pass stream as true, but for in OpenAI npm package, we have to give the response type stream true. So this is something that we have to do. So now response, this we have to do if we want the response to be a string. Now because response is a promise, so we will do not then, and once it's resolved, so we get the response. Now for each line I have written some comments, so that if you go through, because I'll be sharing this GitHub repo, if you go through one by one, maybe you can understand what is going on. So over here, like I said, when an event is sent, because even OpenAI is sending us SSE events, so messages through SSE event. So over here we are trying to listen on the data event, so that is why this is the response, so it's .data.on. so we are listening to data event. Now the data that we get, it's a buffer, so it will be like some long list of numbers. So this is just a node function, like .toString if we do, so it will convert it into a string. So whatever data we get, it is a buffer. Now once we do .toString, it will give us, we'll get the string something like this. You can see it has data colon space and some JavaScript object. It's stringified. So over here it's very familiar to what we get when we are not streaming. We have choices, and choices is an array, and it has a text which has the data that we want to extract, and rest of the things we don't care actually. So this is what we want to extract from the choices. It is an array, and from there we want to extract text. So that's what we will be extracting. So now because it's a string, and every message, like we saw that when we are sending multiple messages and multi-line messages, the last line has, the last character of the line has a new line character. So that's what we are trying to do. So in the lines we have data.toString, and then we are splitting it with a new line character, and then once we split with this, so we get two items. One is with all this data, and the other one will be an empty string. So we are just filtering out the empty string. So now we will have only this in the lines array, only from data to till the end. Now we are iterating through each line. So now the line in the lines, so each line, it's basically just one line. It will not have the new line character in the end, but the data, but this is all will be there in that line. So now what we are doing is we are removing this data colon space, so that we have stringified JSON. So that's what we are doing here using regular expressions. We have removed this with an empty string, and we'll come to it later once we get the message. So over here in the message we have removed this data and everything. So now if the message is not this done, so basically, okay, I'll just explain it. Basically, if the OpenAI stops sending us the message, like when it is done, so the last chunk has this in the message done. So using that we can understand that OpenAI will not be sending any more message, the stream has ended. But if we don't have done, so we have this. So we will parse it so as to convert the stringified JSON into a JSON object. And once it's a JSON object, we can go to choices and to the first item of the choices, and we can extract the text, which will be it here. So this thing might change if you are using a different model. So I'm using DaVinci model, so this is the format for DaVinci model. So now we have the data with us, that which is basically a small chunk. It's not, because it is being streamed continuously. So now what we want to do is we want to send this data to our front end, so that we can read it and display it in our response div. So we are now building the data that we want to send. So we will be doing like this. We have data space, because this is what the format of server sent event should be, data colon space, and then we'll say JSON.stringify, and this data, that is, we will have a response key and the text, and then we will do rest.write, that is the over here request response. So rest.write, so we'll be writing in the response string. Now if the message is done, in that case we'll say rest.end, so this will end the string. So and this we should do just in case we explicitly call explicitly want to close the stream. We don't want to receive any more messages. If we want to explicitly close, so we can send a close from the client and it will stop the stream. So I think this is clear because it's very simple, and this I have picked again very little. I think I must have modified this. I have picked from OpenAI npm package. There was some issue, so on the issue section I think this part I have picked, and most of the this is how you will do it if you understand event streams, even SSE. Now how are we going to receive this data on the front end? So that's what I'll go through now. So I have written all the front end code in the index.js file. So over here I'll just show the I'm just showing the UI part. So this is the title and all this. We have the header and we have a form. Now in the form we have this enter a prompt, and we have an input, and then we have a submit button, and outside the form we have a div where we will be showing the response once we get it. And response is over here I have used useState for response, set response, prompt setters, set prompt and generating and all. So whenever we type in the prompt, so it is updating the prompt using this handle change. Now we'll come to the submit, because as soon as the prompt we have completed typing the prompt and you hit submit, so this is what will happen. So we are checking if the prompt is empty, so we are just alerting. Then we use either prevent default in order to stop refreshing the page and all, and then we are setting generation, and then previous response we are making it empty string. Now over here we will make the post call. So you can see we are making a method post and content type JSON stringify. So nothing new. It's how we actually do it, and it is still an await because we'll wait for the response. Now over here, once the response is okay, so if we don't have any error, so if we have an error, so we'll show some error. If there is no error, so we will be processing the response, and this processing of the response is very small. I'll go through it one by one, line by line, and I have taken some reference from readable stream get reader. I mean, this is from the Mozilla. So the response that we get, and if it is a stream, so what we can do is we can build a reader object. So over here we get rest.body.getReader. We get this reader object. Now this reader object has a read method which will read the stream for us. So first we create a reader object, and then I have created one function, process stream. In that function I just call it, and then if there is any error, so we'll log the error, but that function I'm just simply going to call it down here. So let's see what's inside the function. So inside this function, again it's an async, so it's going to return the promise. That is why we are chaining it here. So inside this you can see first we are doing while true, which means it's an infinite loop. If we do while true, it's an infinite loop. So in this we are using this reader object, and we are doing dot read. So whenever we do reader.read, it returns us two properties. One is done, another is value. So done is a boolean which returns true false. So done means the stream has ended, so it will be true. If the stream is not ended, so it will be false. So if done is true, so in that case we will just log stream completed, and then we'll set generating to false and we'll break. So this is where we will break out of the infinite loop, otherwise the loop will continue. Now the value, just in case the done is false, that is the stream is still running, so the value is basically a binary data. So if you try to print value, it will be a lot of numbers, an array of numbers, and the binary data is basically int8 array format, which is you must have seen for binary data structure it's used. So what we can do with this is we can use text decoder. We don't have to, it is readily available. We can decode binary data using text decoder. So we are creating a text decoder, and we are saying the format is going to be UTF-8, and then we decode the value that we get in the stream. It is a binary data, and once we decode, we assign it to chunk. Now chunk has this this is what we were sending. We were sending data colon space response and some value. That's what we were sending. If we see here, sending response and some over here we are sending data colon space and then a stringified JSON object, JavaScript object, like this. So this is what we will be getting once we do decode. Now over here we should replace this. We are just trying to replace this into an empty string. So our chunk will now have a stringified JavaScript object. So I think I must have said stringified JSON here and there, so sorry for that. It has to be, it is a stringified JavaScript object. Now because we just have this, so we can pass it to JSON.parse to convert it into JavaScript object and to fetch the value out of it. So once it is parsed, so we can fetch the value out of it. Now in the response we have a state over here, the response, which is an empty string. We will be appending as soon as we get more and more value. We'll keep on appending with the previous one. So that's what we're doing. Previous plus parse.response. That's it. It's I think the only tricky part was to read the chunk and convert it into read this value, the binary value, and convert it into readable text, and we are calling it as chunk. That's it. So if we go back to our project, we type here to 50 words, I think, in the okay, so here you can see it has streamed very nicely. So thank you very much for watching, and if you find it useful and if you want to see more such videos and stay up to date, please subscribe to my channel and like if you like it, and I will be sharing the GitHub repo. So if you like the repo, you may start the repo as well. Thank you very much for watching.